My wife was undergoing IVF. On the day of egg retrieval, not long after the procedure began, the doctor rushed out of the operating room and accused me. "You knew the patient was having surgery today, so why were you still having sex last night?" I was stunned. Because my wife was doing IVF, we hadn't had marital relations for over 5 months. It was a bolt from the blue. My head was buzzing. After the doctor finished scolding me, I wanted to return to the operating room. I tried to clarify things and called out to her. I didn't. The doctor gave me a cold look and launched into a tirade. "You say you didn't, so you didn't?" The day before yesterday, a patient hid the fact she had a cold before surgery, which caused bronchospasm and airway obstruction. She's still lying in the ICU. Facts speak for themselves. I've seen plenty of patients and families who lie. The doctor in the operating room was a woman, and she probably mistook me for some irresponsible jerk who only cared about his own pleasure. With no way to defend myself, I had to introduce myself. I'm also in the medical field. I know the basic common sense that intercourse should be avoided during female IVF stimulation. You tell me, how did you determine that my wife had intercourse last night? The female doctor glanced at me, her tone softening. During the egg retrieval under ultrasound guidance today, we found that all of the patient's follicles had been released prematurely. I was shocked. All the follicles were released? Yes, not a single one was retrieved. A couple going through IVF to have a child is like fighting through countless battles: physical exams, ovarian stimulation, egg retrieval, embryo matching, transfer, implantation. We never expected to fail at the very step of egg retrieval. Even as a doctor who has faced life and death, I felt deeply disappointed. However, premature ovulation in women can be influenced by many factors. Exercise, cycling, even emotional fluctuations can cause early ovulation. It's not necessarily due to intercourse. I raised some doubts. The female doctor looked at me sympathetically. "Then I'll be straightforward." The patient's vaginal walls and cervix were severely swollen and congested. We could see slight bleeding points and some epithelial shedding. Moreover, the patient had taken the night injection at the prescribed time, which should prevent premature ovulation. Putting all this together, we suspect the patient did not follow medical advice and had intercourse before the procedure. The female doctor's tone softened. "Of course, we're only speculating. For the exact situation, I suggest you discuss it again with your partner." I smiled bitterly. Whether we had marital relations or not, others might not know, but how could I be unaware myself? Since starting IVF, Sophia had been especially cautious, repeatedly emphasizing to me that during the IVF process, reproductive doctors forbid couples from having sex. The doctor said that if you naturally conceive while on medication, and the hormones aren't right, it would be very troublesome to maintain the pregnancy. I affectionately scratched her nose. "So you're really going to listen to the doctor?" She instantly caught my double meaning, leaning weakly and delicately into my arms, coquettishly saying, "Of course, I listen to you, the best doctor of all." After starting ovarian stimulation, she became even more careful, walking in tiny steps as if she wanted to cradle her belly and follow every move. I, on the other hand, advised her to relax a bit, just live normally, it won't be a problem. And now, someone was telling me that on the very night before egg retrieval, she ignored her own condition and engaged in intense bedroom activity? No matter what, I couldn't bring myself to believe it. The egg retrieval failed, and the procedure was cut short. Sophia was wheeled out. The anesthesia hadn't worn off yet, and she was still unconscious. Even though she was completely bare-faced and looked a bit pale from the anesthesia, it couldn't hide her delicate beauty and charm. I stared at her face, a little dazed. Sophia and I met through a matchmaking arrangement. The first time I saw her, we had planned to meet at 5:30. But one of my patients suddenly developed an intestinal obstruction after surgery, and I had to perform an emergency second operation. Only after transferring the patient to the ICU and stabilizing their condition did I rush to the restaurant where we had agreed to meet. In the past, in situations like this, the person I was meeting would almost always lose their temper and leave. But that day, Sophia sat quietly at the table without a single complaint. Instead, she smiled and poured me a glass of lemon water. So understanding, my heart warmed instantly. Moreover, she was exactly my type. The black tight pencil skirt outlined her exquisite figure, and her rose-red lips were luscious and inviting. She was an art teacher by profession, both beautiful and romantic. She almost fulfilled every fantasy I had about a partner. To put it simply, I fell for her at first sight. We had been dating for 3 months when I married her. From the start, we took a laid-back approach to having children. But a year into the marriage, she still hadn't gotten pregnant. Since I'm in the medical field, I was keenly aware that there was probably an issue with one or both of us. As to who had the problem, we'd only find out after some tests. At first, she was reluctant to get checked. It's only been a year since we got married, can't we just let nature take its course? I didn't agree. From a medical standpoint, if a couple doesn't use contraception and hasn't conceived after a year, it's considered infertility. I also tried to reassure her not to stress too much. If there's a problem, we can treat it. If not, you can relax, and being emotionally stable makes it easier to conceive. Right before the checkup, she hesitantly confided in me that her first love in college had gotten her unexpectedly pregnant, but it was an ectopic pregnancy, and she had to have one of her fallopian tubes removed. When I had the surgery, the doctor told me that even with just one fallopian tube, some people can still conceive successfully. I admit it was my fault. I shouldn't have been so hopeful, and I definitely shouldn't have kept it from you. Please don't blame me for not telling you earlier. It's just that I love you so much, I was afraid you wouldn't be able to accept it and might leave me. Honey, I can't live without you. The day she confided in me, her eyes brimming with tears, the depth of my pity was beyond words. At that moment, a surge of towering masculinity burst forth from my chest, and I forgave her. We're all adults, who hasn't had a past? Besides, she swore to me that since we broke up, she hadn't contacted her ex-boyfriend privately. She even took the initiative to show me her ex's WeChat. I didn't delete him, not because I can't forget, but because I don't care. If it bothers you, I'll delete him right away, no problem at all. I waved my hand, signaling it was fine. After all, I still keep my first love's WeChat too. Holding on to it would just make me seem petty. Later, we tried for almost another year, but she still didn't get pregnant. In the end, it was Sophia who suggested IVF. I was a bit hesitant. How about we do a hysterosalpingography first, to check if the remaining fallopian tube is open? Because I've always believed in natural selection. IVF is artificial selection. But Sophia was resolute. Anyway, we're going to have a child sooner or later. The longer we wait, the harder it gets. Might as well go all in and do IVF now. I looked at her stubborn little face and thought about the hardships she would endure, feeling a bit tender. Aren't you afraid of the pain? She snuggled into my arms. Of course I'm afraid, how could I not be? I've heard it's very painful. But whenever I think it's for having your child, I'm not so scared anymore. I can only blame myself for loving you too much, for being unable to let you go, and having to rely on having a child to keep you. Do you think less of me, that I'm nothing like the strong, independent, and confident heroine they praise in books nowadays? I don't want to be some big heroine. I just want to be a doting wife. I don't care what others think of me. As she spoke, she playfully wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me on the cheek. My heart nearly melted, and I immediately handed her my bank card. My principle was simple. Since my wife bore the burden, as her husband, it was only right that I pay. I don't know if it's because of her mindset. While other women looked worn out from IVF, Sophia dressed up every day, radiant and polished. Except for being a bit more cautious when walking outside, you wouldn't notice anything different about her. I truly admired her mental strength. Thinking about her surgery early this morning and last night, I had planned to swap shifts with a colleague to stay with her. But she insisted that if I changed shifts just to be with her, she'd feel too much pressure, might lose sleep, and that would negatively affect the egg retrieval today. Who would have thought that at such a critical moment, she would choose to spend a passionate night with another man? Looking back now, everything about this situation felt off. Where there's something unusual, there must be a hidden cause. Her condition didn't at all resemble that of a woman undergoing IVF amidst intense pain and struggle. Thinking this, I almost lost my temper and was about to storm out, leaving her alone to face everything when she woke up. As my wife, she had done something so unforgivable to me. Before I punished her, I absolutely could not divorce her easily and let her off without consequence. I picked up her phone, unlocked it with her fingerprint, and scrolled through her chat history. There was nothing unusual, not even any contacts whose chat records had been deleted. I opened the chat with her first love. Last month, he had sent her a happy birthday message, which she didn't reply to. I then checked his social updates. He had posted photos of his family of 3 out on a trip. She hadn't left any comments or likes. Trusting a man's intuition, the person she spent that intimate night with was probably not her first love. My head ached trying to figure out who that person could be. Before I could make my next move, Sophia stirred and groaned softly. She was awake. Having just come off the operating table, she was very weak, but the first thing she asked was, "Honey, how many eggs did I retrieve?" I was a bit surprised. Her first thought upon waking was about this. I hesitated to speak. Sophia grabbed my sleeve. "Honey, tell me." I didn't answer immediately, weighing how to put it in my mind. Sophia's expression was anxious. Is the result really that bad? I sneered. "Missy, you're worried about this now. When you were risking it all for fun yesterday, why didn't you think about this?" I suppressed the urge to slap her and nodded. The doctor said not a single egg was retrieved. Tears streamed down Sophia's face. I didn't comfort her as usual. Instead, I looked at her with a scrutinizing gaze. She seemed to realize something, wiped her tears quickly, and sat up straight. "Honey, I have something to confess to you." She wasn't going to hide it but was going to confess directly? That's bold. I might have underestimated her. She licked her lips, eyes fixed on me, tears starting again. "You know, ever since we started IVF, I've been extremely careful. Especially these last few days, as the follicles grew bigger and my lower belly got more and more bloated. I barely dared to move, afraid that one wrong move would cause premature ovulation. This morning when I went to the bathroom, suddenly there was a sharp pain in my lower belly. When I stood up, my vision darkened a bit. I had a bad feeling." She licked her lips again, tears streaming down like beads breaking free from a string. I never thought the worst-case scenario would actually happen to me. If I hadn't known about her condition in advance, I might have been fooled by her. I really didn't see it coming. Sophia not only can spin stories, but her acting skills are quite impressive. Her words clearly aimed to make me forgive her, even to lead me to conclude that this was just an accident. But did I intend to be easily fooled by a few of her sentences? I hadn't wanted to expose her lies so soon, but now that she's pushed it this far, I have no choice but to make my move. I studied medicine, you know. If you're going to lie to me, at least come up with a better excuse. Just going to the bathroom can trigger premature ovulation? Sophia bit her lip hard, silent. I said coldly, "Do you know how many people's secrets have been uncovered in hospitals? You can lie with your words, but your body doesn't lie. The doctor who just operated on you specifically came over to tell me that your vaginal walls and cervix are swollen and congested, with visible bleeding points and some peeling of the epithelium. How do you plan to explain that?" I crossed my arms and tugged at the corner of my mouth. "Come on, tell me, who was that person?" Sophia didn't react with the panic I had expected. How to describe the expression on her face? There was a hint of shame, but also a calmness as if the other shoe had finally dropped. Her tone was steady. "Honey, where are you getting these ideas? Can you not be so ridiculous? What I'm about to say, you can despise, scold, judge, even look down on me. But you can't doubt the truth." I shrugged. signaling I was ready to hear her out. Sophia gathered her emotions for a long moment, then took a deep breath. First of all, there was never any that person from start to finish. I don't even know what happened, but last night I felt like I was possessed, unbearably restless. Conveniently, there was a little toy in the bedside drawer, so I used it. But after just 7 or 8 minutes, my lower abdomen started to hurt terribly. I was so scared I threw it away, drank some hot water, and lay down. This morning when I woke up, my lower abdomen still ached faintly. You can call me stupid, call me cheap, it's all my fault for being foolish for a moment. Really? I couldn't help but doubt. Silently, I speculated that if she had used a toy, then everything would make sense. Sophia threw back the thin quilt, stood up, and tried to leap into my arms. She wobbled a couple of times, and I quickly caught her. With tears welling in her eyes, Sophia said, "Honey, do you really not trust me at all?" I was tongue-tied, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. The doctor who did your surgery came over and blamed me, saying we shouldn't have had sex last night. Sophia's voice grew louder. For her to accuse me so blatantly is just too harmful. I want to file a complaint against her. Although it wasn't the same hospital, it was still within the same medical system, so it made no sense to complain about a person over something like this. I hurriedly held her back. Sophia's tears fell even harder. Honey, the most important thing between a husband and wife is trust. If you really don't trust me anymore, then once I've recovered a bit, we can get a divorce. Damn it, seeing her cry so pitifully stirred my compassion again. What if the surgeon really had wrongly accused her? But I still had doubts. Such a big thing happened last night, why didn't you call me to say a word? Sophia sniffled and gently pounded my chest. Weren't you on duty last night? You didn't switch shifts in advance, so you couldn't just abandon your patients to take care of me. As a doctor's spouse, she had some awareness of that. I was still stupid, thinking it would only be a few minutes and my luck wouldn't be that bad. Someone once said that when it comes to a wife cheating, as long as it's not set in stone with undeniable evidence, men always choose not to believe it. I used to scoff at this kind of self-deception. Now that it's happened to me, I finally understand. At this moment, I'd rather believe she's just stupid than that she actually cheated. Sophia's phone rang. It turned out her parents were almost here. Sophia pleaded with me, "This is so embarrassing. Can we not tell my parents? Just say it was an accident?" I thought for a moment and nodded. As soon as my mother-in-law arrived, she wore a sour face, lamenting how much her daughter had suffered. Not only did she suffer, but it was all for nothing. Yes, although this time not a single follicle was retrieved, the ovarian stimulation caused ascites, so she needed to be hospitalized for 3 days for observation and treatment. I made an excuse about having things to do at the hospital and planned to slip away. My mother-in-law packed her things while grumbling, "What's the point of marrying a doctor? Where was he when it really mattered?" Sophia pouted and stopped her. "Mom, say less." Hearing this, my mother-in-law put her hands on her hips and raised her voice. "You were on duty last night, leaving you alone at home, and now you want to run off? Am I wrong to suspect something?" I was too tired to argue, said nothing, and turned to leave. After leaving the hospital ward, I didn't return to my own hospital for work. Calm down, Sophia's words, I was still half believing, half doubting. Did she cheat last night or not? Regardless, I needed to find evidence first. I went back to the neighborhood and checked the vehicle entry and exit records at the property management office. I reported Sophia's license plate number. She hadn't driven out. Then I called a buddy. I gave him Sophia's ID number and asked him to check if she had booked a hotel room last night. My friend was startled. "I heard your wife is doing IVF?" I didn't say much, "Don't worry about it. For now, I just have my suspicions." The result came back in less than 10 minutes. Last night, Sophia did not book a hotel room. So, she really stayed at home last night, didn't go anywhere? Something felt off. I still felt something was wrong. If she wanted to go out, she didn't have to drive her own car. I just regretted that we hadn't installed cameras at home to monitor in real time. I once read a saying, when a person cheats, it's like committing a crime. No matter how well they hide it, there are always clues left behind. So, I turned the house upside down. No unfamiliar little raincoat boxes, no men's underwear, no diaries recording a young wife's secrets. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But I still felt something was wrong. Suddenly, I remembered there was one place I hadn't thoroughly checked yet. Should I check it? Yes, I should. I wouldn't be able to sleep otherwise. I called a guy Sophia had never met before, and he accidentally bumped into her car parked in the lot. My buddy called her directly and said he had accidentally hit her car. I have to say, Sophia really kept her cool. She was lying in the hospital, and I was her husband. She should have called me to handle it. But instead, I got her father-in-law. It turned out Sophia had asked her dad to deal with it. Her father-in-law looked surprised to see me, but luckily I had already thought of an excuse. The property management called me too, and I panicked and rushed back. I said, "I've already talked to the guy here, and he's covering all the costs." My buddy nodded and bowed at the right moments. "It's my fault, I take full responsibility. You two don't have to worry about the repair or lost wages. I'll pay for everything." I took the car keys from my father-in-law's hand smoothly. "Dad, you go take care of Sophia. I'll take her car to the dealership for repairs." On the way, Sophia called. I smiled slightly. She was angrily shouting at me not to bother with her car. "Go to your work." I said to her, "I'm in a bad mood too. I took a day off work to help my wife fix the car and take my mind off things." Sophia's voice was choked with tears. "What's wrong with our family this year? Is it the year of the tiger? Why do all these damn things happen at once?" I comforted her lightly. "Dad is getting old, so let's not let him handle this kind of thing. You're sick now, and having Mom and Dad with you will make you feel better. Just leave this matter to me." Sophia responded with a soft reminding me to let her know if anything happened. I parked the car and started checking. The dashcam footage was wiped clean. Interesting. Then I opened the glove compartment. Inside were a pack of tissues, a mask, a power bank, and a tube of lipstick. I didn't find what I was looking for. Finally, I opened the trunk. Inside was a storage box containing a parking card, a fuel card, a pair of sunglasses, and a brown bag. It looked unfamiliar. I didn't remember her ever carrying this bag. The bag had no zipper, just a string with a small lock hanging loosely. Inside lay a phone, a pink Apple device. But I clearly remembered that the Apple phone Sophia was currently using was white. The phone was turned off. After turning it on, I tried the password several times but couldn't unlock it. If I kept trying, it would lock the screen. To avoid alerting her, I turned the phone off again. I pondered. Should I confront her directly with her second phone? If she preemptively deleted all the information, how could I possibly defend myself? No, she must have a flaw. Calmly thinking it over, I realized I had searched the house earlier but forgot one crucial place, her computer. Back at home, sure enough, the computer was off. Turning it on required a password. I tried 3 times, still no luck. I smiled bitterly. If it weren't for this incident, I wouldn't have known she was guarding against me to such an extent. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. All that talk about straining when going to the bathroom. All that nonsense about only resorting to little toys because she couldn't hold back. What a pack of lies. But with such meticulous thinking and cautious actions, who exactly was she risking everything for, sneaking out wildly on the eve of the egg retrieval surgery? Sophia called to ask how her car was being handled. I swallowed my anger and told her it had already been sent to the 4S shop. The car's problem isn't serious, it should be fixed within a week at most. You shouldn't think about driving for now, just focus on resting. Maybe my tone and reaction didn't sound like a husband who just found out he'd been cheated on, because she clearly let out a sigh of relief. I've been dealing with a faulty laptop charger for almost 10 years, it often wouldn't charge properly. I'd complained about it at home a few times. So, using the excuse that I was in a hurry to revise and submit a project proposal, I borrowed her laptop. She hesitated for a moment, probably unable to refuse me, and sent me the password. This time, luck was finally on my side. After booting up, I opened the Dashcam's cloud app, which logged in automatically without needing a password. She must have forgotten to log out before shutting down last time. I clicked through the files on the Dashcam and finally found the evidence of my wife's affair. The latest cloud file showed that Sophia's car hadn't left the neighborhood, it just drove around inside and ended up parked in the most remote villa area of our community. The villa area has high property prices and very low occupancy. For safety reasons, I usually didn't allow her to stroll there alone. But she went ahead and arranged to meet her lover in the car late at night. Hearing my wife's coquettish voice and her lover's low, teasing tones in the video left me stunned. Before this, I had guessed who her affair partner might be, her first love? An old classmate? A male friend? Even her fitness coach? The delivery guy? None of them. Her affair partner turned out to be my most trusted big brother, my senior apprentice, my current boss, David, the head of the anorectal surgery ward in our hospital. Honestly, every man fears his wife cheating. Whether she cheats with someone far beneath him in status and position, or with someone far above him. I don't know which kind of affair would be more devastating to a man. I just felt like my consciousness had left my body, drifting above the room. Brother, you're so annoying. I have surgery tomorrow, why did you ask me out today? Little enchantress, it's just that I haven't seen you in so long, so I wanted to see you once. Sophia hesitated a bit. Are we doing something wrong to Robert like this? A few smacking sounds, David must have kissed her a few times, what's there to be afraid of? As long as he doesn't know about this, it's not hurting him. So, do you like the bag I gave you? I do. It's just too expensive, I don't even dare carry it in front of Robert. Men basically don't understand bags. If you want to carry it, just carry it. If he asks, just say it's a fake, only a few $100. They should have started getting busy. David went silent except for some muffled groans, while Sophia's coquettish bird-like cries kept ringing out. Damn it, David is a doctor too. He clearly knows the risks of doing this at such a time, but for the thrill, he still did it. It's like he's sitting on my head and taking a dump. I patiently listened to last night's files, truly wishing I could grab a knife and stab him to pieces on the spot. But rationally, all I could do was tremble as I transferred all the related files from the cloud drive onto a USB stick. Then I tried opening the chat app, and to my surprise, it logged in without needing a password. It seemed that last time she shut down her phone, she forgot to log out of the app and just powered off directly. Truly, fate has its eyes. The chat history inside was quite complete, showing that the two had been hooking up for quite some time. It turned out that David, that old lecher, had already started having dirty thoughts back when we were still dating, when Sophia first came to the lab to see me. Later, he used the excuse that his 2 daughters wanted to learn painting and asked me to recommend an art institution, so I recommended Sophia. But how did the two of them get together? After reading through the entire chat history, I finally understood. Sophia didn't fancy him at first, but she couldn't resist David's skill at flattering her. Sophia was an artsy young woman, and he actually managed to get his hands on original paintings by famous artists and sculptures by renowned sculptors every now and then. Sophia was utterly captivated by these things. These luxury items, which even money couldn't easily buy, completely broke down her defenses. She felt he truly understood her, like a soulmate. When she was preparing for IVF and feeling down, she took the initiative to seek David out to confide her troubles. He had finally been waiting for this chance. One weekday during the day when David was on leave and I was working overtime, the two of them couldn't resist and did something filthy in Sophia's studio. The most infuriating thing was that yesterday afternoon, when David got off work, he hypocritically asked me, "Your sister-in-law is about to have surgery, why are you still working?" I, being a fool, told him not to worry and that I would stand my post firmly, only to find out he went to meet my wife right after. I couldn't help but rush to the bathroom and vomit. A bed partner, an elder brother, both of them did such a dirty thing behind my back. I'm not only going to get a divorce, but I'll also make sure they're disgraced and ruined. Just then, my phone rang. It was David calling. I washed my face, calmed myself down, and returned the call. David asked, "Did your sister-in-law's surgery go smoothly?" I said, "Not really. During the operation, they found out my wife was a bit careless and ovulated prematurely, so they couldn't retrieve a single egg." David sounded a bit surprised. "No way? No way? Now he's playing the good guy?" I struggled to suppress the urge to kill him and told him I'd be taking leave today and tomorrow. He said he understood and told me to look on the bright side, that good things take time. His hypocritical face made me want to vomit all over again. I used to be such a fool. When he made a mistake during surgery and the patient complained, I even covered for him. And this is how he repays me? Sophia also called, asking if I had fixed the computer. Truly guilty as a thief. I told her it was fixed and that I was done with everything, and that I was coming to the hospital to keep her company. I warned myself not to act impulsively. After this mess, these two are at their most alert. I have to wait, and I have to endure. When they let their guard down, that's when I'll strike. The plan was set, and I was determined. I immediately called a friend who studies computer science and had him plant a Trojan horse on Sophia's computer. He was great and installed it remotely. From then on, I could track every move on Sophia's computer in real time. The next time I returned to the hospital to see Sophia, my father-in-law had already gone home, but my mother-in-law was still there. I told her that neither of them needed to come tomorrow. I had already taken leave from the hospital and would take care of Sophia myself. My mother-in-law's face showed a look of "that's more like it" as she packed up and left. That night, I stayed by her bedside. I gently placed my hand on Sophia's lower abdomen and asked how she felt, if it still hurt. Perhaps out of guilt, she blushed and said it didn't hurt much anymore, just a bit bloated. She curled up in my arms, soft and delicate, saying she was very anxious. Anxious about what? I asked patiently. This time it failed, right? When you weren't here, I asked the doctor when I could start stimulation again. The doctor said at the earliest, it would be a month or two later. I comforted her, why be in such a hurry? You need to rest well, let your little ovaries take a break first. Sophia sniffled, this time it's all my fault for being careless, so next time I want to start early and make up for it. I sneered inwardly, what a careless moment indeed. But I feigned reassurance, honestly, whether we have kids or not, I'm not that obsessed. Mainly, I don't want you to suffer so much. How about we just skip all this IVF stuff and live child-free? Sophia quickly stopped me. No, just because it didn't work this time, I'm determined to keep going. Having a child isn't that hard, if other women can do it, so can I. I patted her shoulder and asked if she was upset. She cried again, saying my parents had just called, asking how she was doing. Your mom even said she had prepared 400,000 yuan, and as soon as I'm stable in pregnancy, she'll transfer the money immediately so I can book the best postpartum care center in our city. I feel right now that it's all my fault for not being strong enough. I've really let her down, I said aloud, telling her not to mind my mom. Don't be upset, my mom just wants a grandchild. But inside, I almost laughed out loud. Although my mom didn't understand, she still listened to me and made that outrageous call. Ha, living in the best postpartum care center? Dream on. For the next month, I kept my cool and didn't make a move, just quietly watching Sophia's every move. She behaved for over a week, then took the initiative to contact David. "Brother, it's all your fault. Last time I told you to be gentle, but you wouldn't listen, and you still made all my follicles release prematurely." She even added a shy emoji at the end. David didn't dodge it either. Feeling sorry for how fragile she was, he said something like, "Maybe I'm just jealous of that Robert guy who actually has a woman like you desperately trying to have his child." After a while, Sophia replied, "Robert is so boring, I'm even afraid the child will have his personality. Anyway, I'm going to do IVF to have the baby, so whose child it is doesn't matter, right? Brother, didn't you tell me you only have 2 daughters, and your wife is too old to have more, so you have regrets? Do you want me to secretly help you have a child?" She followed that with 3 shy emojis in a row. After a long while, David replied with a few words, "How do we proceed?" Unexpectedly, while ancient times had the story of the civet cat swapping the prince, the modern version turned out to be swapping sperm. Their plan was twofold. On one hand, using Sophia's last failed egg retrieval as an excuse, they would stop ovarian stimulation and egg retrieval at the public hospital and instead switch to a private hospital where there was more room to maneuver. On the other hand, David arranged more work for me, so that under the pretext of being busy, Sophia would egg me on to freeze my sperm for embryo creation, while also having David freeze his sperm as a backup. Then, by slipping a big red envelope to the staff involved, they would swap my sperm with David's without anyone noticing. They sent these messages during a major surgery in our department. Midway through the operation, David excused himself, claiming an urgent matter, and slipped out of the operating room, leaving us attending physicians to handle the aftermath. Little did I know, he had gone out to flirt with my wife. Once again, I preserved the evidence. I was absolutely furious at Sophia. She schemed against me at every turn, and with David, her love-struck brain was practically overflowing. She even told David that not only did she want to have his child, but they could also manipulate and select the embryo. "Brother, I really want to give you a son to fulfill the regret of your life. Once I have a son, I'll find an excuse to ask Robert for a divorce." David, however, expressed his dilemma, "My child's mother hasn't wronged me, so I can't just divorce her." "Brother, you don't need to mention divorce. Just keep treating me well, okay? Let's just say this side is your other home. Your 2 daughters could have 1 or 2 little brothers, and when they grow up, they can look out for each other." David feigned sincerity. "That would be great, but wouldn't that be too much of a burden on you?" "Not at all. It has nothing to do with you, brother. I'm the one suffering every day, pretending with him. I never really wanted to be with him anyway. When the time comes, I'll use postpartum depression and childbirth injuries as reasons to file for divorce. He won't be able to blame me then, hee." After reading the chat log, my whole heart felt like it was ripped out and thrown into an ice pit. First it ached deeply, then froze completely. If I had been struggling until now, it was because I'd known David for over 10 years. He hadn't been unkind to me. When I just graduated, as the senior apprentice, he took me to the operating room many times, teaching me a lot hands-on. In the years before I got married, he took me to conferences all over and strongly encouraged me to pursue further studies. As for Sophia, I had feelings for her and truly loved her. With these 2 people, should I strike without mercy? Right now, I utterly despise the compassion I once had as a woman. If you don't strike decisively, the one who ends up dead is you. Once you make up your mind to do something, even heaven will help you. A colleague from the same team complained to me that the last surgery expenses didn't add up. I carefully checked and found that the equipment David used during the surgery was problematic. For example, although he actually used a domestic standard stapler during the operation, the billing was done as if it were an imported special function stapler. The price difference between the 2 was nearly tenfold. Upon further investigation, I discovered that in several surgeries, he had been passing off inferior equipment as superior. Since I found out that David was having an affair with my wife, instead of avoiding him, I deliberately got closer to him. Once, while accompanying him at a social event, he got completely drunk. Using his fingerprint, I unlocked his phone and found that when purchasing staplers, suturing devices, and other equipment, he accepted kickbacks from suppliers, causing the equipment prices to be inflated, and ultimately, these costs were passed on to the patients. So, not only was he substituting inferior goods, he was also embezzling and taking bribes. It seems the money he lavishly spent buying Sophia all those luxury items came from this. What a heartless bastard. I cursed silently in my heart. As for Sophia, I planned to go along with it. Since she was willing to, albeit unofficially, have a test tube baby for the Wang family, I would let her have her way. But as for money, she could forget about freely swiping my bank card. A month later. First, I called the bank to report the card I had given her lost. Then, I went to the company's finance department to cancel that card and register a new bank card number. After that, I went to talk to David. Brother, I need to tell you something. If my wife asks you about the salary card, just tell her our hospital has switched to an annual salary system, and the money won't be paid until the end of this year. David couldn't hide his surprise, but quickly composed himself. Why is my sister-in-law asking me about the salary card? I'm not even close with her. Isn't your daughter learning to paint from her? I was worried she might casually ask when she sees you, I whispered in his ear. To be honest, brother, I suspect my wife has someone else. David was startled. How is that possible? You two have such a good relationship. Have you found any evidence? I frowned. No evidence, really. My wife is actually very innocent. If she had done something to betray me, probably not. But I feel like her heart isn't with me anymore. David relaxed, wearing a knowing expression, and patted my shoulder. Let me be honest with you, women need to be coaxed. Don't rush the kid's issue, and don't pressure her. Children are a matter of fate. You two should relax more, maybe you'll conceive naturally without IVF. I pretended to take it in, nodding repeatedly. The card I gave to Sophia was completely drained. David naturally reminded her, maybe we shouldn't contact each other for a while. Robert even suspects you have someone else. Sophia was shocked. He knows we're together? David snapped, no way. He just suspects your heart isn't with him anymore. Since you're still with him now, pay more attention when you're at home. But I don't want to, I can't handle being with two people at the same time. Be good, for me, even if you can't handle it, you have to. I trust your heart. Sophia immediately took it to heart. The next morning, she reminded me early on, saying I had been too busy lately, and the two of us hadn't had dinner together for a long time. She told me not to eat at the hospital cafeteria anymore, but to come home for dinner. I agreed, curious to see what tricks she might pull. Sure enough, when the time came, David unusually urged me to hurry home. Don't just focus on work, you should spend some quality time with your family. Those two, what a perfectly coordinated pair. As soon as I opened the door, I heard melodious, romantic Japanese songs flowing from the room. But no one was in the living room. I pushed open the master bedroom door. On the big bed, fresh white sheets were spread out, and Sophia was reclining on the bed, dressed lightly. On the rest of her skin lay pieces of sushi. She shyly said, "Honey, do you want some Japanese dinner?" She wore light makeup, her cheeks pale, lips pink, and the entire atmosphere she created was both pure and seductive. It was clear she had put a lot of thought into it. I admit, for a few seconds, I was really tempted. Unfortunately, at that moment, I thought of David. One question after another popped up. Had they played this game too? Was this alluring wife before me David's idea? Had they tried anything more exciting? My interest immediately faded. Looking at her again, I actually felt she wasn't innocent at all. Instead, she carried a heavy air of worldliness. Still, I kindly said to her, "It's only been about a month since your last surgery. It's not the right time for intimacy yet. You should rest more." Sophia's eyes welled up with tears. "Honey, don't you love me anymore?" Of course I do, I said, despising my own hypocrisy. It's precisely because I love you that I don't want you to hurt your body just to please me. Go change your clothes, I'll take you to the mall for a meal. Maybe because my attempt to seduce her failed, Sophia's mood was low during dinner. I clinked my glass with hers. What's wrong? Not happy? She gave a bitter smile. It's just, I don't even feel attractive in front of my own husband anymore. I replied casually, how could that be? I just feel sorry for you. Continuing the act, I took the initiative. I'm busy with work and always feel like I can't take good care of you. How about you go stay with your parents for a while and get some proper rest? Sophia's expression shifted. She visibly relaxed. We're on the same page. I was just about to say, while my medical test results are still valid, let's start the second round of IVF as soon as possible, okay? I frowned, not agreeing immediately. Like I said before, otherwise we can just go dink. No need to ruin your health just to have a child. Besides, my dad recently bought a house and borrowed $300,000 from me. I'm a bit tight on cash right now and can't give you money for IVF. Thinking she could no longer give her dear brother a son, Sophia panicked. She blurted out, you don't have to pay. I have some money myself, and my parents have money too, they support me. So eager, willing to spend even her own money just to have a child? I decided to help her. If you're sure about doing it, you have to be especially careful with your diet during the stimulation. Having your parents cook for you is definitely more to your taste, but it will be hard on them. She waved her hand, showing she didn't mind. Maybe thinking about moving back to her parents' place to make it easier to see her lover, her mood clearly improved. She shared some funny stories from when she taught painting and reminded me not to forget to exercise, to provide high-quality sperm. I didn't forget to throw a little bait, transferring her 5,000 yuan. Eating at your parents' place, it wouldn't be right to just freeload, consider it living expenses. She accepted it without hesitation. Suddenly, as if remembering something, she hesitated and said, honey, I want to discuss something with you. That hospital last time, although it's a public top-tier one, my luck there wasn't good. This time, how about we switch hospitals? Which one? I asked calmly. Sophia named a private hospital. Someone had once inquired with me about it, saying David had shares in that hospital. I used to think that, given his character, it was impossible. But now it seems very likely to be true. Is it reliable? I hesitated a bit. How about I ask around with some colleagues? We can try another place, it doesn't have to be this one. I leisurely picked up a bite of food. Sophia was a bit anxious, holding her phone up to my face and flicking through several web pages. You don't need to ask around blindly. I've already checked. It's this place. After all, it's my body being used for IVF, so I should have the final say, right, she said angrily. Seeing her so impatient, I decided to tease her a little and, right in front of her, called David. Let me ask Brother Wang. When she heard I was contacting David, her breathing visibly quickened, but she stuffed food in her mouth to cover it up. I casually asked David if he knew about that private hospital my wife wanted to go to for IVF, whether their technology was reliable. He laughed it off. I've heard of it, seems pretty good. Then he asked, so, have the young couple made up their minds? Are they really going through with it? I said, I just feel sorry for my wife. At worst, we can be dinks and just live well together. But my wife is stubborn and insists on having a child to prove herself, so I have to go along with her, right? David chatted a bit more, then shifted tone decisively. That hospital is fine. I know some people there. If you need help, just let me know. I hung up the phone, and Sophia looked at me. So? Did your colleague say it was okay? Then she quickly added, it doesn't have to be that hospital, but I've been looking at it for a long time and somehow feel a connection. I cut her off. Brother Wang said it's fine, so let's go with that one. You're the best, hubby. Sophia's smile curved at the corners of her mouth. I thought to myself, laugh all you want, because your time laughing won't last long. Just wait a little longer. Wait until you've implanted the embryo, wait until your old wang messes up at work. Let things ferment a bit more, then it's time to start closing the net. Sophia is incredibly proactive. Once she decides, she acts immediately. She started a new round of IVF stimulation. Last time, when I was doing IVF with her, I occasionally felt a pang of sympathy. But this time, I thought she deserved it, purely her own fault. She really is two-faced. Every time she gets blood tests and ultrasounds at the hospital, she sends the results to both me and David. I don't know if it's because she gives David too much of a sense of security, or if he's just a bit bored with her, or maybe because there's someone new in the picture. After all, David recently recruited a new female graduate student, tall and beautiful, and he couldn't stop praising her. Clearly, David has started neglecting Sophia. From the chat logs, he often reads her messages without replying. Even when he does respond, it's a bit perfunctory. But she doesn't take it seriously, just thinking he's jealous. She even swore to him, I have no feelings left for Robert. That time, you urged me to take the initiative, but nothing happened between us. I'm still with him now only because I don't want to have a child out of wedlock. All the paperwork is such a hassle. Once the child is registered, I'll divorce him, really. I sneered, no need to wait until the registration. Although the law now protects pregnant women, if the woman clearly commits adultery, the man can submit evidence and paternity tests to the court to file for a special circumstance divorce, sue for divorce, and claim fault-based compensation. As planned, she asked me to go freeze sperm, so I went. At her eager insistence, David went too. Sure enough, Sophia followed her plan and pulled the sperm for sperm trick. This time, she successfully retrieved eggs, fertilized several embryos, and implanted them into her uterus. When she found out she was pregnant, the first person she told was David. The second was me. I felt a pang of bitterness and a touch of sourness, but I expressed joy lightly. I thought to myself, is this what it feels like to be an unwitting father? Of course, I kept all the evidence. When David learned he was going to be a father again, he wasn't very excited either, since he's been quite busy lately. 10 days later, the provincial annual conference on colorectal surgery was hosted by our hospital, with many experts and peers from the industry attending. David was scheduled to give the keynote speech. Competition in our hospital's colorectal department was fierce, with 4 wards in total. The chief director was nearing retirement, and it was still uncertain which ward head would step up next. This speech was like standing in the spotlight, a prime opportunity to shine. He took it very seriously. But being the type to boss others around, he had no intention of making the presentation slides himself and instead passed the task on to me. With such a great chance, of course, I made sure to include all his explosive material in the final version. On the day of the conference, I helped him copy the content onto a USB drive. As he spoke confidently, the chat records of him negotiating kickbacks with suppliers suddenly appeared on the screen. David was startled and froze on stage. After a moment, he scrambled to close the screen, but the chief director of colorectal surgery and the hospital president sitting in the audience stopped him. No, let's keep going and see what else there is. The next slide showed a video of his surgical procedure. The footage clearly displayed a domestic standard stapler, but the accompanying billing statement listed an imported stapler with special functions. The chief director of colorectal surgery scowled. Do you have any more surprises we don't know about? David was sweating profusely, trying to close the PPT, but accidentally clicked on an audio file. His smug voice echoed throughout the conference hall. It's not just rectal cancer surgery or complex anal fistula repair surgery that can use Da Vinci surgery. Sometimes it's unnecessary. But when you have a wealthy patient, if you tell them Da Vinci surgery is more precise, more meticulous, and safer, and hype it up a bit, won't they be willing? Da Vinci surgery costs tens of thousands as soon as the machine starts up, so the department's revenue will easily go up. In the doctor's office, while David was spouting nonsense with his newly recruited female graduate student, I secretly recorded it. I set this audio file to be hidden in the PPT, so whenever the mouse was clicked, it would automatically play. Sure enough, he hurriedly tried to close it but didn't manage in time, and the audio played out loud. The screen was finally turned off. The director stood up. "David, please explain what exactly is going on here." With the evidence undeniable, David's face flushed red, and he stammered, this." The director scolded angrily. "Practicing medicine requires cultivating the heart and virtue. Yet you trample on the oath of life first that every doctor swears." Before the day's conference even ended, staff from the Health Commission, Discipline Inspection, and relevant market regulatory departments arrived. Exposed in front of everyone, David's reputation in the industry was completely ruined. Not only that, because his actions involved the current strict crackdown on medical corruption, he would have his medical license revoked and face imprisonment. David is completely finished. Yes, I didn't include any dirt about him and Sophia in the PPT. It's not just because I'm afraid of losing face in front of colleagues and peers. The damage from a romantic scandal isn't as severe as the damage from his breach of medical ethics. The juicy details of their relationship should be left to Sophia. After hearing the news of David's downfall, Sophia tossed and turned all night at home. As if she had made up her mind, the next day she was unusually gentle with me. Early in the morning, she took my hand and guided it to caress her lower belly. "Baby, this is your daddy." Knowing that the child in her womb was David's son made me feel utterly disgusted. I subtly pushed her belly away. "David's done for. Our department's been especially busy lately. I have to go now." Maybe women become fragile when they're pregnant. Watching her attachment to me deepen day by day, I glanced at the calendar. It was about time to make my move. November 3rd, our wedding anniversary. I suggested inviting relatives and friends from both sides to celebrate together. Sophia was all unsettled by my recent coldness. My proposal was like a reassuring pill to her. She excitedly booked the hotel and ordered the cake. Meanwhile, I privately spoke with the MC, telling him I wanted to prepare a video confession of our love story for the event, without telling my wife, to give her a surprise. On that day, all our relatives and friends had arrived. Sophia even had the nerve to ask my mom for money. "Mom, when will you give me the reward you mentioned before?" Fortunately, I had warned my mom in advance, and she replied coldly, "It's still too early. Once the baby is born, it will be my grandchild, so naturally, there will be a reward." Sophia turned away awkwardly. When it was time to cut the cake, I grabbed the microphone and said with deep feeling, "After some twists and turns, Sophia has successfully become pregnant, and the baby in her belly is almost 2 months along. Today, it's truly a double celebration. I've prepared a declaration of love for her, please enjoy." To the sound of romantic music, the host played the video I had prepared. It started with our wedding photos. A minute later, the screen flickered. Then, unbearable sounds and wild, shaking images appeared, Sophia and David's entanglement in the car, along with their explicit chat records, all displayed in full. Sophia's face went pale as she tried to shut down the computer, but I stopped her with a firm hand. Furious and humiliated, she shouted, "Robert, you're so sinister and shameless. To expose this at a time like this. I must have been blind to have chosen you back then." Her father-in-law thought she was disgraceful and slapped her hard across the face. "This time, the one at fault is you." Mother-in-law jumped out, "Why are you hitting our daughter? Our daughter found a more powerful child's father, what's wrong with that?" Sophia burst into tears. "He is powerful, but he went inside." A piece of cake was thrown at Sophia's head, no one knew who threw it. Maybe it was a relative from my side. I got hit on the head too. A chaotic fight broke out on the spot, and it only dispersed when the police arrived. After all this turmoil, Sophia's emotions fluctuated severely, and she had a miscarriage right there. A few days later, I proposed a divorce, but she refused and even wanted to use the remaining embryos that hadn't been implanted to blackmail me. Not all are Davids, you are also the father. I said coldly, blastocysts can also be used for paternity testing, are you sure you want to do it? She pouted but ultimately said nothing. She was clearly at fault, and after the cooling-off period, she didn't gain much in the property division. When the time came, we divorced smoothly. Perhaps everyone jumped on the bandwagon. After that conference, several of David's female students banded together to report him for abusing his position, using thesis supervision as a pretext to repeatedly behave inappropriately towards them. Ambiguous audio files and chat records once again shocked everyone. Half a year after David's downfall, I became the actual person in charge of the first ward of the anorectal surgery department. Well deserved by popular demand. As for the head of the anorectal department, it wasn't any of the previous ward leaders, instead, someone was parachuted in from elsewhere. I have no idea what the hospital's thinking was. However, this big boss trusts me a lot. He has repeatedly, both openly and subtly, expressed his intention to nurture me well. During this period, I was promoted to associate professor and also appointed as a master's supervisor. How do I feel? The competition is fierce, with pressure and motivation coexisting. On the personal front, more colleagues at work have started introducing girlfriends to me. If I didn't refuse, there would be almost blind dates every day from Monday to Sunday. The female students all admire me quite a bit, calling me teacher sweetly. The day before yesterday, a girl clutched her chest, suspecting she had viral myocarditis after a cold, and asked me to listen to her heartbeat. I firmly refused and told her to diagnose herself. I also took the opportunity to advise her to exercise, or else she wouldn't be fit to study medicine. Yesterday, another female student said I look super handsome in a white coat, like a male model wearing a Jägermodern trench coat. See, the temptations for a man are just endless. But I remain very self-disciplined. Whenever a woman is alone with me in a room for work reasons, I always walk to the door, fling it wide open, and speak loudly. Sigh, there's no helping it, desire is like a knife hanging over your head, you have to be on guard. As for Sophia, she came looking for me not long ago. Late at night, crouching by the gate of my apartment complex, clutching my sleeve pitifully. I used to fall for that trick. Now, the more I look at her, the more disgusted I feel. The moment she opened her mouth, it got even worse. Honey, I donated all those embryos for stem cell research at the hospital. In other words, David and I have nothing to do with it anymore. I shrugged her off. First, what does that have to do with me? Second, we're already divorced, I'm not your husband. Sophia said, what I mean is, I'm contributing to medicine too. Please give me one more chance. I stared at her. If you think we can still be together, either you're stupid or I am. And I don't want to be the fool. Without looking back, I turned and walked away. Sophia shouted desperately, is it really impossible for us to start over? Can't love begin anew? I didn't answer, just gave her a contemptuous middle finger. Someone who betrays their partner doesn't deserve to talk about love. And whoever I meet in the future, I won't force it. Everything will be left to fate.